Well, hi there. This is David Wilcock, and it's Sunday, November 30th. The time is 8:50 a.m. Pacific Time. And this is another Divine Cosmos audio blog. We are a website that's been online for 10 years now and are bringing you a variety of unique and interesting content regarding the idea of there being a divine cosmos, that there is more to this world and this life than just three dimensions. Of course, one of the subjects that we talk about quite a bit on my website is 2012. And this is not just a year, it refers to a prophetic date in the Mayan calendar, which is reflected in many other traditions as well, not necessarily in terms of the actual dating, but in terms of the idea that there would be this great period in the Earth's history where there would be a lot of strife and a lot of upset, and that it would eventually pave the way for a so-called golden age on Earth. We are now living in the prophetic fulfillment of those periods of time that were spoken of long ago. All of the things that are happening in this world are very indicative of that. It is kind of surreal to watch this banking spectacle going on in the world media right now, where you're seeing various markets being bailed out, and yet it seems as if very little is changing in the process. To me, this is a very surreal period of time along the lines of what we saw around 9/11, but in some ways the magnitude seems to be even greater, because 9/11 was only a movement into greater fear at the time. That fear did also trigger a lot of people to begin seeking and to awaken to a greater reality. One of the things that happens when you have these shocking events is you start to question the official storyline about everything that you thought you knew was true. And there were many questions about 9/11 that have remained unanswered, and a lot of fishy things in terms of how a simple plane crash could bring down both buildings when the buildings themselves were designed and built to be able to sustain themselves against plane crashes. So we're not going to really get into that because it's a long subject and a lot of controversy around that. What I'm trying to focus on today is just a unique snapshot in time of where we are right now and where we're going. At this point, Obama has been elected president, and we are in that transitional period where we're waiting for the new administration to be sworn in, and in the meantime, we're still in a state of upheaval. So I see these events that happened over Thanksgiving as rather sad and disturbing. Obviously, we had a situation develop with India where the city of Mumbai was attacked by a series of terrorists who were essentially indiscriminately shooting people, but especially looking for people with American passports and trying to create some sort of international incident. There is a lot of speculation in the conspiracy media that American-led elements, probably from the outgoing Bush administration, were responsible for inspiring or financing these attacks in some way. It's possible. There's no conclusive evidence of that one way or the other at this point. There's just a lot of speculation. What is clear is that it has made the whole issue of Pakistan much more focused in people's minds. There's been a lot of chatter on the Voice of the White House source from tbrnews.org about the idea that there is a major problem in Pakistan that needs to be solved. There are nukes that are loose, and the existing administration is not in a position to be able to handle that. So it has been viewed for a long time as a really volatile issue by our intelligence community. And so it's conceivable that they would have created something like this in order to mobilize the public to see that something needed to be done. And also, of course, Obama had made statements that we need to go after Pakistan in his nomination speeches and various parts during the campaign, in the debates and so forth. So it was kind of a sad and tragic note to have Thanksgiving on. I personally was not anywhere but home during Thanksgiving. I had just a lot of time to think and reflect. And it was really interesting to note the juxtaposition between the news, which was so apocalyptic, and what most people were experiencing, which I believe was that they were turning off the news and realizing that yes, atrocities do happen in the world every day, but it doesn't mean that you spend your entire life focusing on that. You certainly don't want to be blind to it, but you want to think of yourself as someone who can choose what you're going to focus your time and energy and heart on. And that's a good thing. It's not wise to let these negative pieces of news overwhelm you. And my audience is largely composed of people who are now awakened to all these conspiracies in the government and so forth. And in that sense, they very much will take my words as useful because I'm giving them more information from those subjects than they ever normally would get anywhere else. But that's not even my focus. My focus has always been on the positive and on how we can steer a path through all these changes. It doesn't change the fact that what we've been told about the way that things run in the world and politics and so forth is really not the truth. In fact, it's so far from the truth that the cynicism has built up to an astonishing level. I think that's part of the reason why in the online conspiracy community that everything has shifted anti-Obama for the vast majority of these bloggers online. There's no reason to be so fickle and disappointingly negative at this point. I don't think it's really wise, but nonetheless, that's what's going on. In my mind, I don't see this as some sort of arranged marriage between the secret societies and the U.S. presidency. I do see this as a very much surprising event that caught the world elite off guard. I think it's also possible that, as I was talking with someone recently, Obama made a decision to bring in some of these members of the cabinet for reasons that should be clear when you think about it a little more. If he were to take a bunch of people who did not have any exposure to the New World Order or the Illuminati or whatever, to prior Clinton administrations or whomever, and put them in positions of power, they would not be ready on day one to dive in the midst of this legendary crisis, which is essentially a defining moment in American history. When you look at the size and scope of the money that's been thrown at the problem, this already eclipses every other American issue we've ever faced. So this is clearly a very singular point in time in world history, a very unique moment in which the future is not really known. And I have had a lot of dreams about this, suggesting that we are going to be moving into more of a unified coalition of nations. Now, I do not see that as a negative thing. The dream was not presenting it as a negative thing. There are different ways to go about something like this, and just people that would use the term New World Order, that refers to one particular ideology. It does not refer to the only way in which something like this could be accomplished. But I will say for the record that my dreams have indicated that there is going to be some sort of consolidation of nations. And I don't know to the extent to which that will also involve currency or not. But it is interesting to watch this financial collapse in progress. And there are lots and lots of personal stories on the sidelines that are very interesting. As those of you who've been following my website know, I'm working on a film called Convergence the Movie. Actually, I've been working on this film for 4 years. I came to LA to do a talk at the Conscious Life Expo. At the time I was somewhat well known, but nothing like I am now. And a movie producer was in the audience and came up to me and said if we did a film about this work of yours, it would be totally amazing. Now at the time, I had been working to learn Adobe Premiere Pro, which I'd bought, and to learn Lightwave 7, which is a CG animation program that lets you do the kind of effects in the movies. And I was working on both of those things, hoping to be able to be a one-man production team and get my work out in video. Now at this time, YouTube had only barely started, and it wasn't clear yet the extent to which you could distribute your own video without having to pay server fees, because back in the earlier days of the internet, when I first got online, video was this unthinkable option because you had to have a great deal of money to be able to afford a server that could actually chunk out video in a steady fashion that wouldn't just drive people crazy. So really this whole process for me started 4 years ago. I was living in Kentucky at the time.